We always thought we were good communicators. After all, we've been together for over 40 years. But nothing prepared us for what happens when you travel full-time and suddenly spend every waking moment together.
We had to change how we talk to each other, and more importantly, how we talk about the things we used to just keep inside. We're talking emotions, energy, compromise, mismatched rhythms, shared space, and yes, feelings.
Even if you're not partnered right now, you've probably wondered what 24/7 travel does to a relationship. This is our honest answer.
I'm Judy.
And I'm Kevin. Welcome back to Finding Gina Marie, where we share our lives as full-time travelers and the connections we make along the way.
So what did life look like for us before we started traveling full-time? Well, first of all, we'd raised 3 children into adulthood. We survived COVID, and we both worked from home during all of that time. We thought that we had great communication skills, and we were used to spending a lot of time together.
But that was an apartment with doors and rooms and places that we had set up for our individual activities. I had a Whiskey Riffs channel on YouTube that I was producing and I was enjoying recording. That was in the bedroom. And I also had my guitars and I was playing keyboard, again, in the bedroom. My workspace was in the bedroom and Judy had her own separate workspace.
And those are all ways that you could decompress.
Right.
And meanwhile, I would be in the kitchen cooking quite a bit. And that was my happy place a lot of the time. But of course, we got out a little bit more. We just had separate lives more often than we were together. It turns out that sharing a life together is quite a bit different than sharing every single moment of it.
But everything shifted in November 2022 when we launched our full-time travel lifestyle.
Overnight, all of our routines and rhythms shifted. Most of the time, we're living in studio apartments with very cramped kitchens and very small bathrooms, and very little sink space, too.
There was absolutely no room to get away from each other. We were together 24/7, literally.
We'd never really even spent more than 2 weeks together in such close quarters. And we were also juggling how it felt to be newly retired and also just the nerves of figuring out how full-time travel was supposed to work.
Yeah, that was a really stressful time. So everything had changed. We got smushed together. Anxiety was up. This was just a rough time when we first started.
And when you add into that 2 very strong-willed, opinionated people, and you can imagine that there would be friction.
Us?
And things really started to be uncomfortable about 7 months in when we started to do some fast travel. And Kevin just really needed us to put the brakes on things because the overwhelm was really getting to him.
Yeah, I wasn't ready for all the things that we had to do on the road. And everything that happened caused a little bit of tension. It wasn't like one big thing. It's just those little pain points, they start to amplify.
And that's just it. One thing we really didn't expect was how many micro decisions we had to make about everything. Because we were moving from one place to another, it meant that we needed to pick a side of the bed and where to go, what to do. Every decision needed to be analyzed.
Yeah, there were no routines like we had back in San Francisco. This was all new and changing every single time.
And I think all of that just led to an underlying tension for both of us.
And then we had the realization that we're going to be doing this 52 weeks a year, and that added to a little bit of the tension. I don't think we had the tools yet to manage the kind of microaggressions or little things that would push us in one direction more than the other. We weren't that good at communicating like we thought we were.
I think in our daily lives, we just weren't used to having so much tension that we had to deal with right on top of each other all the time. Maybe when we had space, if I was working in the kitchen, I could resolve some of those issues while I was cooking.
Pounding out the dough. This is Kevin's head.
And Kevin could just kind of play music and that would just bring him peace. But it meant that we didn't necessarily have to talk through some of the problems that we had.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of the puzzle. We could just let things settle down on their own. But when you're always trying to get something done, either planning or recording or writing or doing some task together, It just meant we had to do something different. We had to find solutions.
I think a lot of it that was really tricky was just trying to read each other's energy and also to understand that problems weren't necessarily caused by one or the other of us. It was just due to the fact that we were uncomfortable and we had different ways of expressing it and dealing with it.
Yeah, we had to figure out new ways of social and relationship diplomacy.
We'll share what helped most later in this video, but one of the things that we really want to emphasize is that decision fatigue is a real thing. So let's talk about clutter, space, and packing compatibility.
We're both pretty tidy people, and we don't have our stuff strewn all over the place.
We kind of know that everything has a home and we try to keep it in there. For instance, I keep my clothes in packing cubes, whereas Kevin tends to use the hangers in places that we go.
The surprising thing to me is that we seem to lose stuff in these very small places. I can understand if you have 5 rooms, but there have been 1-room spaces, like in Madrid, where somehow we hung clothes on this little...
What's you?
Okay, I hung clothes on a hook that I don't know why I couldn't find something the one day. It's like, it's got to be here. There's no room for anything in this place. How am I losing something? And I just wasn't seeing the stuff in the corner.
And because our bathrooms are so tiny, we tend to keep our things in our little dop bag so that we don't have all of the counter, which is usually pretty small, covered with the things we use to get ready in the morning. One of the things that's really important is to compromise, and Kevin is really good at doing that. He gives me the side of the bed that has a nightstand when there's only one, and he's the one who's willing to climb over the bed to go to the restroom in the middle of the night. So because I like to read at night, I like to have some place to drop my phone at the end of my reading time. And so long as I keep it on dark mode, that's the compromise I make. It works out for both of us.
I prefer her compromise be not to read for hours at night, so we can both get some sleep, but we'll work on that still.
We also compromise on who does the dishes. I'll typically do those, but then Kevin takes out the garbage.
Yeah, and Judy's cooking, and I figure if she's going to cook, I'm going to clean up. And sometimes she just says, you know what, you've got other stuff to do, take a break, and I'll do the cooking and the dishes. These kind of back and forth trade-offs are what make things a lot easier, especially if you're not so hard and fast with rules. Like there's no side of the bed that we have to be on. There's no chores that each of us has to do or don't have to do. All that stuff can be more flexible. It makes things easier for us.
So let's talk about energy cycles and exploration styles. Even after all of these years together, we didn't really know that we had different energy levels and ways we prefer to travel, especially because when we were taking vacations, we were both in alignment that we were going to jam in as much as we possibly could over the course of 2 weeks. And while we both love exploring, as full-time travelers, 3 days of back-to-back exploration is an overload for Kevin.
I love walking around cities. All that stuff is extremely fun for me, except when they're actual tours where I feel like I'm on duty. I've got camera duty and I better not miss anything. And I'm looking at every shot and I'm looking at everything we're doing and listening to the guide, trying to capture everything. That's mentally exhausting for me. The physical activities are fun. Looking at things is fun, but when I'm looking through a camera, sometimes I'm like, can I get a break? I don't need to do this 3 days a week, 3 days in a row at least.
And one of the compromises is that sometimes I will take more of the footage just so that you can get a break. But also I've learned, and I try not to schedule things back to back so that there is some more downtime.
Yeah, it's all due to weather and time. Sometimes we get pushed and we have to do a few things back to back. And I compromise and say, yep, I understand. I'm going to pump myself up and we're just going to get through this.
And I've also learned that Kevin doesn't always want to see quite as much as I want to see. And so we have to balance it and be okay with the fact that we are going to miss some things.
Yeah, and there's times when Judy wants to have an audio guide, and I'm like, I can't do the audio guide and take photography and catch footage and do everything else. You do the audio guide, I'll do the video, and we'll be good. You can fill me in on the stuff I missed.
We've also learned that it's really important for both of us to not be hangry, and always for Kevin to get a cappuccino in the morning.
That's
He
true.
will be much happier if we sort out where we're going to have breakfast every morning so that we don't have to make that decision every day.
Yeah, if that's a routine that we can keep, that's wonderful. Some cities it's harder. We never find a perfect place for breakfast. So we just have to have a little bit extra energy to find another coffee shop in the morning. Not ideal.
And that typically leaves us only one other meal to have to sort out a day. And Kevin has typically a little pickier stomach than I do, so he'll tend to give me 3 restaurants to choose from that sound good to him, and then I'll make the final decision, just so he doesn't feel like he has to be responsible for everything.
Yeah, we trade off these things. We've learned that, this would be a nice little gesture. And the nice little gestures don't have to be big at all. They can be really, really small. But when you're together 24/7, every little gesture means so much. Another layer to full-time travel can be work. Now, we run a YouTube channel, so we're working a lot. Some people may be doing side hustles, or they may be working remote, and that can add to the friction of the time that you have to spend with the other person, or time you have to do the things the other person wants to do. If you got to get work done and the other person wants to go have free time, there's a struggle there. There's a friction there that you've got to get over.
We didn't realize how working together would be another layer of stress. We thought we would work better together than at first we did. It was a little tricky at times, but we also have learned to give each other grace and free time. So Kevin doesn't get annoyed if while he's editing, I'm doing some quiet reading. And I don't get frustrated with him when he's doing something on his own, when I'm scripting or blogging or answering comments. So we've kind of come into this nice balance that we're allowing ourselves to have some free time just to rejuvenate and restore some of our energy.
But we do know that we work differently. I don't mind working independently, and a lot of times Judy wants to collaborate on something. So my attitude is, let me go work up some ideas and I'll come back to you. And she's like, can't we work them together? I'm like, okay, it's not how I work best, but because we understand these differences, we're able to address them in the moment and not let things like that get under our skin and get us aggravated.
But that wasn't something that we learned right away.
No.
We had to go through a lot of pain and suffering before we figured out what style worked for both of us and understand what was creating friction in each other.
Yeah.
So up until now, everything that we've been talking about have been mostly small tweaks. But about a year ago, we had a big situation, and it wasn't a blow up, but it was where everything really had to change. Part of it was because we had a lot of fast travel about to come. We were getting ready to go back to the US. There was a lot of high tension, and we really needed to get a handle on what was going on.
I think it comes down to we thought we were communicating well. We thought we were expressing ourselves well. But honestly, I wasn't saying all the things that were bothering me. I was trying to be a compromised person and just manage the situation instead of letting Judy in on the information that was in my head and how I felt about something or when things were bothering me. I wasn't being good about that. And she said very clearly, we need to say everything out loud. And I think that made a huge difference. It wasn't easy.
It wasn't easy.
It wasn't easy.
But we also needed to learn to apologize because sometimes we were holding resentments that had nothing to do with the other person, but we didn't explain what was going on. So I would maybe be short-tempered with Kevin. And for instance, maybe it had to do with I had just read a frustrating comment. Maybe somebody was ugly back to us on YouTube. And so I was aggravated. And so he would ask me something and I'd be short-tempered with him. He thought, what in the world did I do wrong? Well, he didn't do anything. I just hadn't let go of the negative feelings that I had. And I had to apologize and express what was going on. And he could understand, all right, it wasn't maybe the best way to deal with something, but at least I know it wasn't about me.
And we've done a little bit of the counselor talk, or say, when you do this, it makes me feel this way, or when this happens, I get frustrated. And I take it personal when you're angry at me, even though it's not because of me. Saying these things out loud and expressing our feelings has made such a big difference. But as Judy said, this is just a year ago. We traveled for a long time, and we've been together for so long without learning this skill and without using it in practice all the time. We still have to remind ourselves, we need to say what is going on, because sometimes we forget and revert to that old way of, I'll just deal with it in my head.
If we don't express what's going on, it's really confusing for the other person.
And sometimes it's stupid little things. Like Judy will say, let's go do this, and then we'll have this food. And I'm like, I'm kind of hungry now, and I really don't want to do the local experience today. Can we just get some pasta or burgers or something simple? Because I just need to get something in my system, and I need to move on with the day. And, say that. Don't just eat whatever is in front of you and get upset at the other person for making you eat the food that you didn't want. Sorry, I have food-related issues. You may hear them in this video. But, it's a simple thing that when I'm hungry, I am hangry, and I am upset because I feel like that's my treat. Eating the things that I like or having the coffee in the morning. I'm a man of simple needs.
A lot of guys aren't comfortable sharing their feelings. And even though I think that you have a high emotional IQ, sometimes to keep the peace, sometimes it's easier to just want to hold things in.
Yeah, I want to make her happy at the expense of my happiness until my happiness erupts into something that she doesn't want to deal with. Moody Kevin.
And of course, all of the things that we talked about earlier all help prevent some of the blow-ups that could otherwise happen as well. Just being kind to the other person. Like Kevin will often refill my water bottle. So when I offer to refill his, it's a small gesture, but it makes him just very happy. And just the kind things that you can do for each other. Like he keeps my tech charged, and that prevents blow-ups so that when we're ready to go sightseeing, there's no frustration that one of us has a nearly dead phone battery or anything like that. One of the things that we realized early on was that sometimes when we're doing a lot of work, we can tend to get cooped up. And so just getting out and getting fresh air has made a world of difference for both of us as well. Just kind of understanding, we've been indoors for a few days and that's not serving us at all.
Sometimes you don't realize it until we say, you know what, we should just go out. We bought groceries, but today is the day we leave the apartment, get a walk in, and just explore somewhat to just clear our heads. Even after 1,000 days of travel, all this is still a work in progress.
Yes, we are not perfect by any means. There are some days we still get quiet and we don't express our feelings. There are days when we still blow up at each other. They're less frequent, I think, these days, fortunately. But we are not experts on relationships. We just know what is working best for us and what isn't. And we're trying to make small micro tweaks so that we can continue to live like this as long as possible.
Whether you travel together as a couple or just live with someone that you care about, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic and how you handle these relationship issues.
If you enjoyed this video, you might also be interested in the other 2 videos that we have linked below. One is about our 5 favorite destinations that changed us, and the other is about why travelers quit full-time travel and how to beat the odds.
And remember to wander more,
worry less,
and bring a passport.
Until next time.
Until next time.